this video is sponsored by these lovely people who very generously support me on Patreon, and in doing so help keep me making these videos. I don't put mid-roll ads in these videos anymore because I hate them. So if you like what I'm up to here and would like to help keep it going, I've left a link to this channel's Patreon page under your pillow. So sometimes I see a specific kind of comment on these videos or in our community Discord server where people lament that they don't know how to get started making their dream game because they can't draw, or they think they are completely useless at art. And for the most part, I disagree with that standpoint. In fact, I did have a video planned for this channel about various techniques you could use to get off the starting blocks if art isn't your strong suit. Like, I was going to cover everything from using AI to generate backdrops and characters to games that stand out, because of how simple their art style is. But long story short, that video is in the bin now because recently I had a bit of a crisis of faith with my own game's artwork, and instead of being practical and positive and saying that it isn't the art that really makes a game like this and that everyone can do it, I threw a bit of money at the problem instead. So yeah, things have changed a bit around here, and I should probably explain how, why, and what it all means. Welcome back to the Point and Click Devlog, an ongoing series in which there will now be at least one other person's name in the game's credits. So it's kind of hard to say exactly what it was that brought all this on. Maybe it was Return to Monkey Island being as vivid and alive and self-assured as it is. Maybe it was the amazing games being made by people in our Discord server looking increasingly super duper polished, but yeah, I just kept looking at my art and a nagging feeling was building that it wasn't where I wanted it to be. Obviously, with a limitless budget, I wouldn't be doing the art myself at all. Like, I'm not an artist. I actually failed at art at school, but what's kind of confusing is that I'm not terrible at it either. And that's a weird place to be. Sometimes I think it might be easier to be in a position where you flat out can't draw a stick man at all, because then your hand is kind of forced to either make something very abstract and representative or just to work with somebody else. When you're like me though, and you can, kind of hammer out something that isn't completely dreadful, you do get tempted to do it all yourself, which, yeah, that's exactly what I did. But then I know my limitations, and I suppose that's the big problem here. I'm okay at this stuff, but I'm not good at this stuff. And at the same time, I want what I'm making to be the best thing it can be. So hang on, let's rewind. How did we get to this point? Well, people who've been watching this series long enough will remember the weird, protracted process I was using to create my game's backdrop art all the way back at the very beginning, where I would draw stuff in a pixel art app, then blow it up to 4K, and then pretty much dick about in Photoshop for ages until I'd basically undone any point in having started with pixel art at all. It was quite a weird, on-brand waste of time, but regardless, this was the result. And it's been kind of fine for the most part, but yeah, that nagging feeling, once it starts to build, it's very hard to shake it off. Then one day something kind of serendipitous happened. I was looking at Twitter and saw that an artist I was following mentioned that he was open to freelance commissions. Enter David Puerta Altez. David's a Spanish environment and character artist who, as you can see here, is really pretty good at what he does. So on a complete whim, I messaged David and told him what was going on with my game. He agreed to work his magic on one backdrop as a test, and this is what he came up with. Clearly, this is a big improvement, and I loved what he'd done to make things pop a bit more than I would ever be able to. So from there, we worked out a deal for him to help take the 30 odd other backdrops I'd already done and subtly improve them. Now, before I really start showing some of what David's been up to since, I should probably explain a few things. One, I really don't have a lot of spare cash, so paying anyone to do anything on this game is a pretty massive decision. But what's really important to note here is that the amount of money David agreed to is only really enough to warrant him spending like a couple of hours on each backdrop and doing what he can to, I don't know, essentially tighten the screws. So this isn't a big redo, in other words. As much as I'd love to be able to pay David enough to burn everything down and start again in his style, this is more a case of adding some polish to what's already there. 2. Because I'm so far along with development, a lot of specific things in each environment can't actually change all that much, as it will affect pre-existing character animations and puzzles and nav meshes and a bunch of other stuff that I can't be bothered to fix. And 3, the poor guy is being handed the worst organised PSDs you've ever seen in your life. Like, these are terrible 50 odd layer puzzles more than they are PSDs, where none of the layers are named and their ordering doesn't really make any discernible sense. Either way, I sent David everything along with a document explaining anything that absolutely had to stay as it was, what would be nice to have, and anything else, you know, that he might need to know, and he has been working his way diligently through that list ever since. So here are some of the results so far. In each case, it is a general tightening up and polishing of everything I had previously, adding details and extra lighting effects where possible, and even though I am pretty biased, I think everything's now looking pretty great, right? In fact, I posted a tiny little gameplay clip on Twitter with one of the first backdrops that David had amended, and literally one of the first comments on it was about the backdrops looking better than they had prior. And I don't know what more I could ask for than that in terms of reassurance. So that's all great, but like, there is a slight moral quandary about all this. Like, when this game and Devlog series started, it was all about seeing if I could make this big proper game all by myself. And I admit that, you know, man makes game by himself is not exactly the newsworthy event that it was, say, 10 years ago, but still that was the challenge. And now, demonstrably, it's not being made by just me. I'm fully aware then that if you've been watching this series because you see a bit of yourself in me and my journey, then you might now feel a bit betrayed by this situation. You might feel, as a part of my brain is constantly telling me that I feel, a bit annoyed that I've opted to just throw money at the problem, because you may not consider yourself an artist either, and you might not be in a position to do the same thing. And yeah, that is something that I've had to wrestle with on this a little bit, because, you know, this goes against the original manifesto, I suppose. And believe me when I say this is something that I've thought about quite a lot. I think though that at the end of the day, you just have to be able to be happy with the thing that you're making, and to do that thing, you know, to the best standard that you can within whatever parameters you're making it within. That's all that matters. For me personally, I'm going to be a bit happier with that thing than I perhaps would have been. And yeah, I guess it's lucky that I can hire David to do this, but I don't really know what my conclusion is. And maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe you think it's weird that I'm basically sitting here apologising for hiring someone to do some art on an indie game. And maybe it is. I guess I'm just saying that things on this project have changed, and while I think the result of that change is good, it also means it's a different project fundamentally, and I'm a different developer because of it. Not worse or better, just different. And because of that, I thought it was worth talking about, because if not, then what the hell is this devlog even for? Ultimately, I guess that while having art in my game that looks a bit nicer than it did before is awesome, I suppose you will have to let me know in the comments if my worries about betraying the one-man band ethos that has glued a lot of this community together are justified worries, or if I'm just being a weird, overthinky idiot. The decision is yours, I guess. Anyway, thanks very much for watching, liking, subscribing, and being a nice person. Don't forget that you can always come and join us in the community Discord server, and you can help me pay David by pledging on Patreon, or you can just close this window and get on with your life. Either way, hopefully I'll see you in another video at some point in the future. Bye.